no idea it was gonna be as big as it was. But now people buy it in 100 at a time, and then they mail them out to their clients with a simple explanation. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the other day I was reading this book as I was reading, and I couldn't stop thinking about your situation. Do me a favor, read the book. I'll call you back in a week. Let me know what you think. I have people that say, hey, Dave, I never did more than $30,000 of premium, and I started to hand that book out, use that script. Last year I did $300,000. So I probably have someone tell me that once a week. So it really, I think, is able to articulate a conversation that people otherwise have maybe had a difficult time presenting, and using it as sort of a third-party expert to set the table for that type of discussion.
What is up? Welcome back to the CA Power Player Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Askins, and today's special guest, man, this dude speaks all over the world. He has absolutely been helping an insane amount of advisors improve their business and their practice. The founder of Power of Zero, which is not only a boot camps, a book, a concept that has also, I think he sold like 300,000 or 400,000 copies of his book. Crazy impressive guest. Excited for this one. He's probably joining us all the way from Puerto Rico. Please welcome Mr. David McKnight.
Thanks, Cody. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, buddy. Man, you're someone I've been following and studying for years. And it's a really cool, surreal moment to have you hanging out with us today on the channel and the podcast. So thank you for your time.
Well, it's a pleasure. And I've been watching you for a while as well, and admire all the stuff you're doing. So I'm just happy to be here chatting with you. Appreciate
it, buddy. Thank you so much. For those that maybe don't know your story, I would assume a lot do, but there may be some younger part of our audience that doesn't. I would love for you to just kind of share a little bit of your journey. Like, how long have you been in the industry?
Yeah, so this is the only thing I've ever done. I came right out of college, right out of BYU in 1997, and started working with MetLife Financial Services. So I've never really known anything different than the financial services industry. So I started with MetLife, then I worked with John Hancock for a few years, then I went independent in about the year 2000, and was really weaned on the idea that cash value life insurance has a place. It's not the whole plan, but it has a place in a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement. So I went independent. I actually became I was a regional sales director for an insurance company for about 6 years in Wisconsin. That's what brought me to Wisconsin.
Wow.
And after that, I went in the process of being a regional sales director, I developed a presentation that involved 3 buckets: taxable, tax deferred, and tax-free. And it started off as like a 5-minute whiteboard presentation. I look at the client, I'd say, hey, look, you got all your money in taxable and tax deferred. If tax rates are going up, we got to get it shifted to tax-free. Why? So you can be in the 0% tax bracket. Why is the 0% tax bracket such a big deal? Because if you're in the 0% tax bracket and tax rates double, 2 times 0 is still 0. So that sort of became the theme of my practice. And this is a really interesting point that, we both know and friends with Tom Hegna. I was in a meeting with Tom Hegna, and he gave this fantastic presentation, one of the best I'd ever seen. And he said, by the way, if you like this presentation and you wished your client had been here, I actually wrote a book, which is the book version of the presentation you just watched, and you can buy it for $20 in the back of the room, right? So that was one of those, epiphany moments for me in my career, because I had developed this presentation and went from a 5-minute presentation to about a 75-minute presentation. Little by little, I would evolve it and hone it and add things that really struck hot buttons with people. But the only people I could reach with that presentation were the people who were in the room listening to it. And when Tom Hegna said that, at that very moment, I decided to commit that presentation to book format. And that was back in 2013. And that's what became the Power of Zero. And so the Power of Zero, I sort of threw out on the internet. I threw it out on Amazon. I crossed my fingers. I hope for the best. And man, people just started to buy it. And they found that when they bought it and they handed it to clients, it could set the table perfectly for a conversation about tax-free retirement planning, on how the LIRP, or what I call the life insurance retirement plan, fits in that comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement. I remember one day somebody came back from a financial conference. They said, hey, Dave, I was at this conference. I was looking across the row. I saw 3 people reading your book. And that's when I started to realize, I said, oh my, this is a lot bigger than I ever thought it would be. People people who started to consume the book and hand it out to clients. And then I went on book tours and things like that. And so really the book is sort of what put me on the map. And then I've obviously written some subsequent books, but the Power Zero is really foundational to everything that I'm trying to do. And I tell people, hey, you want to learn how to protect your clients' assets from the impact of higher taxes, learn the concepts in the Power Zero. And that's got to become your Bible when it comes to protecting your clients from the impact of higher taxes.
Yeah, it's a powerful talk too. As you're teaching it around the country as well. Did you ever dream that, like, when you put it up on Amazon, that many people would buy your book?
Yeah, the first day that it launched, about 500 copies were sold, which is decent. I thought,
Yeah.
I probably have 500 people that follow me at that stage of my career. So I thought, there's really no guarantee that it's going to sell more than 500 copies, because everybody who knew who I was at the moment bought a copy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happens with a lot of books that financial advisors launch, is they write a book, they launch it, and then the people that they know buy it, sometimes out of pity, and that's the extent of it. But I think what people found was that, and I've had a number of people tell me this, they say, hey, Dave, I can hand that book out and it just greases the skids for me. It just makes it so easy. It sets the table, as it were, for that conversation about tax-free retirement planning, and particularly how the LIRP plays a role in that balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement. So really, no idea it was gonna be as big as it was, but now people buy it in 100 at a time, and then they mail them out to their clients with a simple explanation. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the other day I was reading this book as I was reading, and I couldn't stop thinking about your situation. Do me a favor, read the book. I'll call you back in a week. Let me know what you think. I have people that say, hey, Dave, I never did more than $30,000 of premium, and I started to hand that book out, use that script. Last year I did $300,000. I probably have someone tell me that once a week. So it really, I think, is able to articulate a conversation that people otherwise have maybe had a difficult time presenting, and using it as sort of a third-party expert to set the table for that type of discussion.
Yeah. How many policies do you think what's crazy is how many policies have you actually sold for other people that you've never met? The advisor or the client?
Whenever somebody comes up and says, hey, last year I did 30, this year I did 300,000. Thank you, Dave. I say, look, all I want you to do is go back and retroactively put me on the app for 10%. That's all.
Exactly.
That's all I'm asking for. Right. So I don't know. I'm just tickled and touched that I've had the impact that I've had. I'm touched and honored that people use the book and that it's been able to impact people's careers in a positive way. So really, that's really the only reward I need, is the gratification of knowing that I've been able to help people out. So that's really, I think, the bottom.
Yeah. I've been impressed by that too. Like meeting you, speaking at a similar conference with you and a bunch of really powerful, impressive individuals, and then getting a chance to like hang out recently. Like I've been really impressed by that. I can tell that you care, your heart's in the right place. You also understand the industry and the different products and concepts better than most people that I know. Has that always been the case for you? And why is that so important?
Well, I've written a couple of different books, and I also have a podcast. And I'll tell you, one of the best, and you may be able to speak to this yourself, one of the best teachers is just having a podcast. And when I'll give you a classic example, Cody. A month ago, somebody came up to me and they said, hey, Dave, what do you think about digital currency? And I said, I have no idea. I have no real position on digital currency, like what impact that's going to have on the country, what that's going to do to your personal liberty, what are the far-reaching implications of that. So this last week, I filmed a video on digital currency, and I had to research it to the nth degree to come across as somebody who looked like they knew what they were talking about. So just the act of being a quote unquote authority on a subject forces you to just understand every nook and cranny of a given subject. And the fact that I'm coming out, three new videos on my YouTube channel a week, one podcast per week, I write about a book a year. The act of doing the research for all that stuff forces you to understand these types of concepts in a way that maybe the average layman wouldn't understand it. And so I think it's been a blessing to be in a position where I really need to understand all these different things, because I think it's helped me level up my game.
Yeah, I would say so. And yeah, you're right. Like when you become like, it's interesting because I started caring about my health and physical fitness when I started like putting myself out there more. And I started seeing myself on video. I'm like, oh my gosh, so it's funny. Like that can be in a lot of different ways, I guess, where you do start to pay attention to it more. And you don't, and also too, like a lot of people struggle with like an imposter syndrome, where they're like, I want to make sure that, am I really the person that should be teaching this and training on this, and you've clearly done an amazing job at doing that. One of the things that I feel like y'all built is almost like it's really a marketing machine, but like a prospecting machine. I've noticed that's one of the biggest things advisors struggle with is consistently getting in front of people, and the right people every single month. Speak to what y'all have done on that front, because as I've really got to know your company and what y'all do, y'all help advisors in certain territories all over the country with consistently getting in front of higher net worth individuals.
Yeah, and let me sort of explain how I started out in this career. When I started out on this career, I was pretty good at getting referrals, and so at the end of policy delivery, I would ask the clients for referrals. I had a very pat way of doing that, and so I could usually get 8 to 10 referrals out of every client, and that sort of was what kept my business going. And I developed a process called the magic number. And the magic number basically was, how many calls do I have to make every day, whether they pick up the phone or not? Because I had backed into my numbers. I knew that if I made so many calls, then I'd get so many people on the phone. So many people would say yes, so many people would say no. So I basically figured out that I had to make 17 calls per day to be able to reach my goal, my income goal. So all I had to do is wake up every day and make 17 calls. That's all I had to do. So it was like, wow, this is easy. Make 17 calls. But here's the problem. Every day I woke up like I had the sword of Damocles hanging over my head. Like I had a rain cloud above my head all the time, because I always knew that I had to make those 17 calls. And those 17 calls followed me around everywhere. And I hated it. I hated that I was slave to the 17 calls. And so it just gave me heartburn. And I said, there's got to be another way. And so probably about 15 years ago, I came across a concept where you could present a workshop, not in a restaurant where you're serving chicken dinner, you're bribing people to be there, but in a university classroom setting to retirees and pre-retirees, people that, have done a good job saving, but they just don't have all the information. And so we would send out mailers and they would come into our classroom. We would spend 6 hours with them over 2 nights. And basically all of the walls of distrust that you might normally have in that chicken dinner restaurant came tumbling down. And by the time we finished that class, they knew us, they liked us, and they trusted us. And they were willing to come into our office to talk about the most intimate details of their personal situation. And so what I did was I took that basic concept, and once I wrote The Power of Zero, I created an entirely different university workshop built around the concepts in The Power of Zero and my follow-up book called Tax-Free Income for Life, which basically talks about how the annuity and life insurance and assets under management all fit together in a cohesive way to help get people to the 0% tax bracket. So the university workshop that's built upon the concepts in those 2 books. And so what happened was, what we found is that advisors who use this system were able to position these types of solutions for the people that came to those class in a much more efficient, much more effective way, without all of the heartburn that went along with the magic number and making those 17 dials each and every day. So people, in effect, advisors could in effect wake up January 1st, have their calendar planned a year in advance. I mean, I went from every day I got to make 17 phone calls to I wake up January 1st and I have my calendar scheduled a year in advance. I know roughly what I'm going to make that year, because I know that every workshop that I do produces X amount of income. And so it completely took the heartburn and the roller coaster ride out of the industry. It leveled out my income. It it made it a much less stressful ride. And so I think, now we've got about 250 advisors across the country who utilize my workshop. And I think they utilize it because it sets them up for a consistent, predictable, sustainable stream of new prospects each and every year. And that erases all of the heartburn that typically drives people out of the industry.
What a great answer. And it's cool that you've created that to where advisors literally have something they can plug into and go make 300 grand, 400 grand, et cetera, consistently. Do you still have heartburn today? No, just kidding.
No, that's a good question. I actually, I used to do a lot of personal production, and I would meet with 20 people a week, and that actually meeting with all those people actually did give me a little bit of heartburn because it was just a lot of work. And so most of what I do, I still do meet with some clients, but most of what I do today is I write, I speak, I produce content, and I run my organization. And those are all things that I love to do. They're in my sweet spot. They're in my unique ability. And so every day I wake up, I used to wake up with angst and heartburn. And now I wake up every day and the sun is shining, the birds are singing, and just life is good. So one thing I'd love to communicate to your audience is find something that you love to do that doesn't feel like work, and you'll never work a day in your life and you make a lot of money along the way.
Amen. So true. So true. We have a lot in common. Like we used to talk about writing, speaking, creating content, running an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I'm trying to get to that point in my life eventually where I just do those things because that's totally what I enjoy to do. Yeah, I gotta get better at the writing part. So maybe I may need some help with that. I wrote one book and I hated it, so I got to get better at that. One thing that I was thinking about too, as you were talking, is I wanted to pivot to kind of like products. Like there's these people in the industry that they love certain products, they hate certain products. Some are like, oh, you should never sell IUL. Some are like, oh, you should never sell whole life. Some are like, I love both, or they're both terrible, whatever. What's your opinion on some of the key products? Some are like against FIAs and some are against MIGAs. It's just kind of crazy. Do you think they all have a place, or do you think that just some products are inferior to others? What's your opinion on that topic?
I get this. I mean, there's a lot of influencers in the industry that are radically pro whole life and radically anti IUL. Occasionally we'll come across someone who says, hey, whole life in this scenario and then IUL in that scenario. Part of the Power Zero paradigm is we utilize life insurance as a way to build money up so that somewhere down the road you can take that money out and spend it on your lifestyle at a period in time when tax rates are likely to be dramatically higher than they are today. So now all of a sudden it's not just the accumulation, but it's the manner in which you distribute that money in retirement that becomes very, very important. And so I'm very attuned to what the provisions are in a given policy that allow me to unlock that money and take it out by way of a loan. I insist, and I've done this in my book called Look Before You LERP, I insist on having a policy that guarantees that I can take that money out tax-free and cost-free. Now, every life insurance policy will allow you to take that money out tax-free by way of that loan. Loans are tax-free by definition. But the cost-free only happens when you have a company that's willing to guarantee that you have a zero net cost loan. And so if part of your strategy involves building money up so that somewhere down the road you can take that money out by way of that loan, then that loan provision becomes almost the single most important provision in the entire contract. So that's why I don't recommend whole life, because whole life by definition does not allow for a guaranteed 0% loan, whereas some IUL carriers do. Not a lot of them, but there's a couple that we are attuned to that allow you to take that guaranteed 0% loan. And so that's a huge factor for us when considering what type of product that we use. Now, if you're talking about Bank on Your Life or Infinite Banking, then that's probably your whole life product that you're probably going to want to use. I don't advocate IUL necessarily in that situation, but I also love this idea that you can use IUL and you can receive the death benefit in advance of your death for the purpose of paying for long-term care. I know you can do that in whole life, but it's the combination of that long-term care feature and the guaranteed 0% loans and the robust growth over time that I really, really appreciate.
Yeah. What a great answer. I love that. I was taking notes like crazy. I love that. You mentioned earlier too that you were used to get like 8 to 10 referrals when you would meet with someone, and like you built out these processes and systems. If someone is struggling to get referral, referrals at all, what advice would you give them?
I used to have a sheet that I would, a little photocopied sheet of paper that had different categories of people that they knew. For example, and it actually said at the top of the piece of paper, who do you know that ... And then I had a series of bullet points. Who do you know that just bought a house? Who do you know that contributes to their 401k above and beyond the match? Who do you know? And so I would literally get people, they would get out their phones, okay, and they would start scrolling through their contacts. And I'd say, who do you know? And you know what I would tell them? I say, look, all I want to do is invite them to lunch. They're eating lunch anyway. Let me pick up the tab. That's all I would say. And you would be surprised how many referrals I got. I mean, I got to the point where I probably had a stack of referral sheets that thick. I would just go through them and say, who of these people have I not contacted yet? So I always had 17 people to call. But if you can figure out how to get referrals consistently, you will never have to worry about prospecting ever again in terms of, making a cold call or what have you. So I would use that. I think you could get dropped into any city across the country, get parachuted in, use that concept of that sheet of paper. Who do you know that? And just pick 15 categories of people that you would want to meet with and just go through those and write down the names. And, I would, I say, Cody, one trick I had was I never said anyone else. If they give me 3 names, I never said anyone else. I would always say, who else? Who else do you know? And they would keep, as long as I kept saying who else, they kept giving me names. And when I felt like they were all tapped out, that's when I would say, okay, anyone else? To which they would naturally respond, no, that's it. But I would get to the bottom of that sheet and I'd say, who else? And then they'd keep giving me names. So I turn the sheet over and I keep writing names on that other side. And so that really kept me in the business for probably the first 4 years and, producing at a pretty high level.
That's phenomenal. I love that. That's so good. But especially when you're talking about like giving them these life events to think about of people in their life that have just, these things have happened to them. That's brilliant. I haven't heard anybody put it that way. I love that because that's what I love about that. It's going to paint a picture and trigger someone that they're like, yeah. Because I mean, when you start talking about who bought a house, who did this, who had a kid, who, people are popping in my head, as I'm sitting here, right? Which is cool.
It's like, and to give you an example of, if somebody came up to you right now, Cody, and said, what's your favorite song in the world? What's your favorite song? You'd have a hard time figuring that out, right? Like, what's my favorite song? What do you mean? What's my favorite song? If I said, Cody, what's your favorite song by Michael Jackson from the Thriller album? You'd say, Beat It, or Thriller, or Billie Jean, or whatever. So what you do is you narrow the scope. They're searching their brains. You narrow the scope of what they have to search through, and you make it very specific, and it's much easier to get referrals that way, I found.
Genius. Yeah. Because you said, I thought you were actually going to put me on the spot asking me for my song. I'm like, I don't know.
Exactly.
But,
so you see how hard it is. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. So difficult. That's phenomenal too. And I love the question too. Like, this is the power of like phrasing and asking things correctly. Who else versus anyone else? Because
right.
Yeah. Every time I'm like, anyone else? They're like, nah, I can't think of anybody. But who else? It's
exactly.
like
the yes or no question.
No
who else is an
answer.
open-ended question. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Incredible. Is there anything else that you would love to share about what y'all do and how you help advisors that we haven't mentioned or talked about yet?
Yeah, we're not necessarily looking to replace what advisors are doing. They may have some things that they're doing really, really well. That's their cake. We're looking to build on top of that cake, get some icing on there, right? So, you may have an advisor who's already producing at a high level, 150,000 or more. Let's just take what you're doing and maybe combine it with what we can do and sort of level up your practice. And I think that once there's a lot of advisors out there who've never been in a position where they have a consistent, repeatable, sustainable process whereby they can meet new prospects. And I think that once you haven't really lived yet, once you can get in a position where you don't have the angst, you don't have the heartburn, you don't have the stress of where's my next client going to come from, your perspective on the industry will absolutely change 100%. And we have a pretty good track record of taking people in that position where they're so stressed out about prospecting and just restoring happiness to their life and their family and their outlook on the world.
Yeah, this can be the most stressful piece, and you have definitely found a repeatable system, duplicatable system that people can plug into and can take all that stress away. Yeah, it's impressive. If they want to learn more and they're like, man, I want to, they can go to Amazon and check out the book, Power of Zero. Is there anywhere we should direct them or send them if they want to like learn more about what y'all do?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you can go to powerzero.com. We got a video series there that you can watch to learn more about it. I always tell people, hey, go to my YouTube channel. I put out 3 new videos per year. I tell them that after, watch my videos for 6 months, you'll become David McKnight without the 7 kids. But if you want the 7 kids, I can show them how to do that too. So, so there's a lot of resources. Read my books, watch my videos. Go if you want to talk with our team, go to powerzero.com. We're happy to chat with you about a potential partnership. But I'm just happy to be able to make a contribution to the industry, and whether people work with me or not, that's a separate issue. But I'm just grateful to be in a position to be able to help people.
It's awesome. Well, I'm grateful that you are doing so much of that. I'm grateful that you're spending some time with us today. Thank you for joining us on the Power Player Podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, buddy. Huge thank you to David McKnight, Power of Zero. Go check out his book and everything they're doing. Super impactful. And thank you guys for hanging out and listening to the Power Player Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you're like, man, I know someone that needs to hear this. Who else needs to hear this? Go share that with them today. Thanks for hanging out and listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Adios.
Hey, if you enjoyed this, I got another one you're going to love. It's right there. Click on it. See you in there.
I'm so excited for today's CA Power Player Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Askins. We got a special guest. He is back on the channel talking about how to sell life insurance from home. Here's what I love about this person. Okay, I'm telling you, this will be one of the best.